This is quite easily my favorite way to dial in and practice and refine all of the major and minor triad inversions, every single one of them, across the fretboard. And the concept is called gospel chords, right? So taking triad shapes, and we're just playing two chords, so two chord tones, one major, one minor. We're going to be in the key of G. So if you think about this sound, right? And you continue, we'll mess around with that further. Right? If you continue to play around with that and move through these shapes using G and A minor, it has that gospel flavor, and it's a really cheap, easy way to attain that flavor and inject it into your own playing. And like I said, to practice and refine these shapes that are integral to mapping out the neck, to getting arpeggios going in your solos, and just learning them across the neck, because we're dialing in 3-shape chunks. Anyways, it's a really, really great way to do things. I'm going to show you an easy exercise and then a really cool kind of musical way to play with these flavors. So I would call it, a 10-minute routine if you really want to go for it, but this will be timed so you can adjust things and make it shorter if you just want to play a little bit, but you don't want to jump in, right? You just want to dip your toes. So anyways, really quick, the major scale, right? We've got 7 notes. There's 7, and then we repeat the root. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, repeat the root. And this is in G major, right? So we're going to be going through this in G major, but you can use this in any key. So if you get familiar with all these shapes in G major, right? Well, move it to B major, move it to D major, right? But G is the first note, A is the second note. These are the only 2 chords we're going to use. So in the scale, right, G major, the G chord is, of course, major. Now, the rule would dictate that the second note, A, would correlate with a minor chord. So here's a G major triad. Here's an A minor triad. Great. That's all we got to know for now. Here's our first 2 shapes already. And I'm going to show you everything on the 3-2-1 string set. G, B, and the high E. However, you can take this much further, because in the description, as always, this is a benefit of watching these videos, I love to give a free resource. Well, I'm not going to sell you anything. Yeah, I teach a little guitar. You can email me at easyguitarpractice@gmail.com if you're curious about doing some Zoom stuff, I suppose. I can't say I'm going to have room for everyone if you're curious about that, but I don't need to sell you anything additionally. All right, like and subscribe. That's helpful enough if you find this to be valuable. But anyways, in the description there's a free download. All right, no email required, no strings attached, and I'll give you every single shape on the 3-2-1 string set. But I'm also going to give you every shape on the 4-3-2 string set, excuse me, D, G, and B. And the 5-4-3 string set, A, D, and G. And the 6-5-4 string set, low E, A, and D. So you'll have every single string set, and you can work these shapes on every string set. Crucial to getting familiar with triads and figuring out how they connect together. So it doesn't have to click right away, but if you kind of, maybe one day you do 3-2-1, the next day you do 4-3-2, you'll start to get more and more familiar with how things click into place and can help you map out this neck. All right, so anyways, with that being said, G, A minor, these shapes are based on the E bar chord shape, right? We have an open E, we move it up here, it's a G, we flat the third and make it a minor chord. Up here it's A minor, right? So we're just taking the top 3 strings. G, A minor. Now this follows the movement of a major scale. Right? There's G major just using the high E string. High E string, first note. High E string, second note. let's do another G shape. So we're going to go back and forth from G to A minor. High E string, right? Third note in the G major scale. B, and you can double check that, right? You can check your math. G, A, B, right? G, A, B. So from now on, you'll just have to trust me. But here's G, and you'll start recognizing, right? Oh, there's the D shape moved up here, just the top 3 strings. So you might start getting a feel for the cage system, right, of triads and mapping out the neck using triads. The open C chord, the open A chord, the open G chord, the open E chord, and the open D chord, right? We use those as a framework in the cage system to move those shapes around, right? So here's the open E shapes. The D shape, this is also the D shape, right? Think D minor. The difference between D major and D minor, well, G is right here. Next stop would be A minor. But they're based around the same shape, they're just the difference between major and minor. All right, now you'll recognize that the D shape, for those of you who aren't familiar, does ultimately connect the way the C shape would. So if we play that D shape and we bring in all the strings below it, it's the same as the C shape, right? So the top 3 strings of the C shape, if we move that up 2 frets, right, it's the same stuff. So C and D connect directly to one another using the cage system. So now we've got, you know, the E, the C, and the D inside of that system. And now we've got the A shape up here, so this is a G, and then this is an A minor. So you could play it down here, but cooler, more flavorful up here in my opinion, as you start moving things around. And we're gonna go up the whole octave, so from here up to, you know, 16, 15, 15. Now you'll recognize we're skipping the F sharp, right? So we could play this diminished shape to finish things off. But this is just about the major and minor shapes, all right? The diminished shapes will be for another lesson at some other point. All right, in fact, I actually have a triad lesson here that you might find helpful as well. This is just my favorite way to refine those shapes once you dial them in, specifically the major and minor shapes, okay? So we've got G, A minor, G, A minor, G, A minor, G. Okay, there's the deal. So what I would do is I would just run through those shapes. For me, I love 5 minutes. That's my like sweet spot of time on, you know, working on something, especially if I know it and I'm just trying to dial it in and refine it. So just 5 minutes. And just up and down, up and down. And I would recommend a click track, a metronome, right? And, you know, people always ask, or they don't always ask, but sometimes I'll get the question, can you show that with a metronome? 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, right? Following just that click, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? You can follow it however you want, but it's pretty simple to just hear the click, 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 and play in rhythm, all right? And how fast you choose to go is based on your capacity, okay? But I would go 5 minutes, metronome. Playing in a good rhythm, making sure everything's clean. You usually want to go a bit slower than feels comfortable so that you can dial in, you know, your exact technique and making sure the shapes are perfect and you're playing in a really clean manner. And I would just go downstrokes, 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 all right? Now to make it musical, right, because I said I would work on this for about 10 minutes. To make it musical, I'm also in the description, right, so on top of the free PDF that has all of the shapes, I will also give you an MP3. This is not a cool sounding backing track. It is literally just the G chord and the A minor chord back and forth. But you can really experiment with the G and A minor gospel chords on top of this backing track. And you can create your own loop. Like I said, you can do this in any key, so you can create your own loop and mess around with this, in any key, but obviously you have to create your own. This is in G and A minor. And I'll just show you that for 5 minutes, you can mess around in a really musical way, because the backing track is basically 5 minutes on the nose. And then that's the deal. You can go and do this on your own, but let me load up the backing track. We'll do it together. And like I said, if you are finding this helpful, you think this is a cool concept, and just wait till it gets really flavorful. But if you are enjoying it already, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, okay? But for now, let's move on to the actual backing track and playing around with these in a musical way. All right, so we've got the backing track going on in the background. It starts on G major, and then it goes to A minor. So just the two chords that we're using with these triad inversions, right? You can transpose them and lay down your own backing track like this in a different key, but for now we're in G major and A minor, so it makes it really easy to play with these inversions over the progression. Now, I always think of like kind of fast transitions being synonymous with that gospel sound. So for example, we're going to A minor, so I'll try to land on A minor. Right, something a little bit quicker, transitions from shape to shape. But obviously that takes some time, and of course that was not the cleanest I've ever played these shapes. But you can, start on the G. We're going to A minor here, so let's just wait till we go back to G. I'll start on A minor. Landing on G, right? If you feel more comfortable starting on A minor, you can play it slow but still in rhythm like I just did. And then you can start playing around with, quicker transitions, quick transition into some slow transitions, lingering on, a couple of strums on one, chord. And it can give you some insight into playing this in a jam. Maybe you're not taking a solo, but there's like bass player, guitar player, maybe you're one of two guitar players, and no one's taking a solo, there's a singer, doing something. Well, bass player's taking care of those low register sounds. Maybe the other guitar player's, playing some sort of triad, from the A string to the G string. And okay, I'm gonna take care of the ones on the 3-2-1 string set so I can play something in a higher register, kind of like maybe the keys would do, and you don't have keys. There's a lot of scenarios where you could use these to your advantage in a kind of a jam scenario, in a band, things like that. And of course here, you got the backing track going so that you can play around and get a feel for those tones yourself. But you can also just, go through the scale, and that's fine too. And just see how that sounds, right? Always good to end with that, the same chord, I think. But anyways, there it is. Pretty simple stuff, but really, really powerful, especially if you start dialing it in and you play in a band or you like jamming with friends and there's like sometimes 3, 4, 5 guitar players. Like, it's very boring to be playing the exact same thing, You want to be playing something that isn't stepping on the person soloing, right? You don't want to step on their toes, but you want to give that progression a little zest. This is a great tool to have in your toolbox. So anyways, cool practice session, something to dial in your brain, your fingers. Like I said, in the description, there's a PDF to download everything. Like and subscribe, very helpful for me. And as always, thanks for stopping by. I appreciate you all, and peace. I'll see you on the next one.